Hello, my name's Jane Pierce. My business is Tarot Jane, and I'm here to talk to you about the major arcana. In tarot, we have 5 suits, and like playing cards that have 4 suits and the Fool or the Joker, in tarot cards we have 4 suits and this 5th suit that instead of just the Joker, the Fool, has 22 cards. And the major arcana, just like it sounds, is the suit that's got the most power. It's the suit that talks about the universality of the human condition. And I want to share with you some of what those 22 cards mean and why they're important. Of course, you could do a divination system just using playing cards, but when you have a tarot suit with the major arcana, you've got this ability to get deeper into the universal human condition. So, we're going to start by talking about the Fool. It's the first tarot card, but it's a 0 as its number because that 0 represents the very beginning, the egg that starts the whole process. And like a freshman in high school, the Fool knows nothing, it's just launching itself. As you get a little farther in, you get the Sophomore or the Magician card. These 2 cards are frequently the starting cards. The Fool that knows nothing, the Magician who knows more than the Fool, but like a sophomore, doesn't know as much as he thinks he does. We take these 2 cards and then we look at the next 4 cards. If the Fool means a start, a new beginning, a surprise, an ignorance, and a full willingness to jump in, the Magician who means I know what I'm doing, but I don't know enough to have mastered it. So you've got the ability with the Magician to have tools. As a matter of fact, the Magician is always shown with the 4 tools of the 4 elements that match the 4 other suits of the tarot cards. But that Magician knows something, but not everything. Then we come to these 4 cards that represent the male and female and the mundane and mystical components. The High Priestess is the female mystical leader. She is powerfully intuitive. She sees beyond the veil, and her power lies in not the real world, but the world that underlies where we live. The intuition that says, I have an answer, I just don't know where it comes from. Then the Empress, who is the mundane feminine authority. She is the nurturing mother. She is the one who's got it all handled, the queen of the castle, the one who has all of the ability to bring into the real world, into the mundane world, the visceral, powerful parts. She brings life, whether that's bringing life to a baby or bringing life to a project. She's the one who births a book and births the family and hosts the party and makes all of the pieces of the real world come together. The next 2 are the male authorities. First, the male mundane authority is the emperor. He rules the kingdom. He's hierarchical and power structured. If the empress is a matriarch who works in a very communal system, the emperor is a patriarchy who works in a hierarchical system, and he is ruling the mundane authorities. So you think the emperor, think government or a big corporation, anything that has tremendous bureaucracy and the wheels of power. And then the Hierophant used to be called the Pope. He is the male spiritual authority. Unlike the High Priestess, who's intuitive and connective, the Hierophant or Pope is a hierarchical structure, a male authority who teaches and solidifies the passing on of information. So any established religion or any established religious teacher is represented by this Pope or Hierophant. And those 4 cards, the High Priestess, the Emperor, the High Priestess, the Empress, the Emperor, and the Hierophant, solidify the different types of power and the power people that are represented in them. The next 3 cards talk about the tension between 2 things. First comes the Lovers, which is the beautiful blending of opposites. When the Lover card showed up, it can mean that you and a partner are in love and working in sync. But it also means that you've gotten a place where your head and your heart are working together. The 2 opposite parts are in perfect balance. In the Chariot, the next card, those opposite forces are in balance briefly. They're fighting each other, and you see this energy of the black and the white horse, of the pulling the chariot, wanting to separate. These are not well balanced or perfectly balanced, but rather struggling to balance. And in that struggle, there's a shortness of what the chariot can achieve because it's pulling your head and heart together for a short period of time. And in that tension, giving you more power and more fight to hold it together. And the third dualistic card is strength. And there in strength, we find that beauty has triumphed over the beast. It is the triumph of our higher nature over our bestial nature. So here the heart has conquered the brute strength that's represented by the lion. And that ability to outsmart or outthink is what you get when the strength card shows up. It's working smarter, not harder. It's charming the beast. It is overcoming conflict with brains and beauty and charm. Remember, though, beauty doesn't beat the beast. She charms it. And so that fight from the chariot of two opposites into battle is not found in strength. Instead, there's a smoothness and a beauty to the power of that woman who has controlled the bestial nature of each of us. It's our higher self triumphing over our id. Those three cards take us pretty far. Now let's look at the next set of cards. This is where sometimes the order of the cards are disrupted. Most often, the next card is the Hermit. The Hermit very obviously sets out on their own. They are not invested in being part of a crowd. If you walk to a different drummer, if you are willing to be outside of a group, then the Hermit represents you. It represents that ability to go searching. And frequently, if the Hermit is shown with a lamp, saying, I've mastered the light, and now I'm taking my enlightenment out into a world the rest of you might not be able to see. Along with the Hermit comes justice. And justice, again, the order is sometimes flipped. Justice is the ability to weigh those two things, to take the sword and the scale and say, I will met out justice. I will weigh the evidence and I will enforce my judgment on the world. That third card that goes into that sometimes rearranged order is the Wheel of Fortune. And the Wheel of Fortune is the spinning and the change that comes with the power of the seasons. It represents not a person, but a movement in time. What goes up must come down. You'll see on the Wheel of Fortune card 4 holy guardian creatures. Each of them represent the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac. One of them, the lion, gives us Leo. The eagle gives us, interestingly enough, Scorpio. It's fixed water because it's the perspective that Scorpio brings. There is also the bull that is Taurus and the stubborn fixed earth part of it. And finally, Aquarius, represented by an angel that says, I am higher and intellectually above it, but I'll carry you and your feelings if I need. So in that Wheel of Fortune, we have 4 points of the year. They're called cross quarter days in pagan mythology. And those dates are that sense that the year goes around, the wheel goes around. And sometimes that wheel represents our life of child into maiden, to the mother, to the crone. But whatever that change is bringing you, know with the Wheel of Fortune, you've got to wait for the tides to move in and out, the seasons to change, be those the seasons of the year or your life. And now we move forward again. And as I said, these 3 years are sometimes ordered differently. Hermit, Wheel, Justice is just as common as the other order. The next 3, though, they're always in this order. They are the Hanged Man, Death, and Temperance. The Hanged Man represents the willingness to sacrifice for what will come. It's a card of paying your dues. Frequently, it shows Odin hanging upside down on the world tree, the work and sacrifice that came to get the divinatory power. And The hanged man must come before death, because for the hanged man, think of a butterfly in a cocoon, the caterpillar who is sacrificing and seeming to be unmoved until it can transform. And the death card is that transformation. My phrase for the death card is, what's death to the caterpillar is birth to the butterfly. And so in the death card, we have more transformation than ending. It is the card that represents the end and change and rebirth of a new life. Ironically, the place I get the death card to show up the most is when I'm reading at a senior all-night party. These people who are graduating from high school and dying to childhood and being reborn into adulthood, we hope. So the death card in that transformation shows us the power of change. And then comes temperance. Temperance is what comes beyond that part where we have gotten changed and now can have a foot in both worlds. There's a foot in the water and a foot on land. We know the first round of the tarot and have also the ability to bring a higher wisdom and a greater perspective to the work we're doing. The temperance card shows dynamic balance. No longer is justice being equally and permanently, in a temporal sense, made even. In temperance, we have this flow. The water pours from the water to the land. And that balance that becomes dynamic means when it shows up in your reading, you have both the wisdom of the mundane world and the ability to see beyond it. Now, that balance and temporal dynamic balance becomes really important when you get to the next two cards, because the devil card is about out of balance. It is intensity and chaos. It can be addiction, but it also can be the pan energy, the chaotic energy, the full in indulgent energy. So while some people see the devil as negative, I see it more as beyond structure, beyond the energy that we want of control. Let the devil then bring chaos and new life, overindulgence, and going out full in whatever you're doing. That exuberance of the devil brings a destruction in the tower. The tower is a card that shows a tower being destroyed by lightning. And I think of that as the place we built to keep ourselves safe, and eventually figured out that with no doors and windows, that we had built a prison and not safety. So the tower being destroyed is the destruction of the defense mechanisms that controlled our life and limited our growth. It's not a fun or pretty one, but it is a necessary one to reach our true potential. So the devil, with its exuberance and its out of control chaos, brings destruction of the old structure of the tower, and it leaves us free to reach the three luminaries. These next three cards, the star, the moon, and the sun, show increasing light that comes with first the starlight guiding us, then the moon guiding us, and finally the full light of day guiding our steps and bringing us where we need to be. The star card is often thought of as destiny. Think about traveling with only the North Star as your guide. You know what direction you're heading, but you may not be able to clearly see all the steps on your path. And so often when we escape our defense mechanisms and escape old structures that kept us bound too tightly, we have to launch ourselves towards a North Star, towards a goal and destiny that is certainly not clearly laid out. And so you guide yourself in a direction without clear steps with the star, towards a destiny, towards a fate that the journey is still uncertain. With the moon card, we see a little bit more. There is an echo in the moon card of the high priestess. Here, our intuition guides us as we see an ever more clear, but still not the clarity of the sun. That moon card invites us to look at our intuition, but reminds us that intuition is a good servant and a poor master. And so when we let our intuition become our master. We get the negative parts of the moon. We get the superstition. We get the fear of moving forward when we can't see clearly every step of the path. Also in the moon card, just like the moon, we have a sense of a cycle, the new moon and the full moon. And there will be times in the moon card that the dark of the moon gives you very little more than the North Star, and times that the full moon shines so bright you are nearly at the sun. And so comes the sun, the bright light of the sun that is a triumphant means of achieving your path. You not only know where you're going, you know how you got where you're going and where you want to go next. And so the sun card shows a celebration, a triumph of awareness and insight, a full enlightenment that sees all of the pieces that you need to see. And then the last two cards. Judgment first is the card that brings the consequences of the path you've chosen. Traditionally, the judgment card shows the judgment of life after death and the rising up from the grave. But this judgment card is more a judgment of you have had your life laid out. What consequences does your triumph bring? It is also a message that says back to some level of temporalness. Your path is moving forward, but in the judgment card, where is it right now? Time to dot the I's, cross the T's, and make things complete. Because judgment says we have to finish and be judged at a point on our path. And then after that judgment, we come to a more well-rounded and fullness. The world card has echoes of the Wheel of Fortune. Again, you will see the four holy guardian creatures reminding us that we have traveled all four parts of the year. All four elements, earth, fire, air, and water, have come together, and we stand centered in them. Centered in a completeness of our journey, and in that completeness, we see the egg or the oval that will very soon give birth to the new Fool and return us to 0 point. This journey that I've talked about from the Fool to the world is the hero's journey of exploring the world, meeting the people that you need, claiming the authorities, and finding a way to balance those authorities and those dynamic tensions until you break free and reach your final destination. I hope you've gotten a little bit of a sense of that journey. And remember, when the major arcana show up in your life and in your reading, they're reminding you what stage of the journey you are at. These cards are the powerful cards that have echoes in the minor arcana, and I hope you'll look at some of those videos that talk about each of the suits, the numbered cards, the court cards, and finally a video about how each of the major cards are echoed in some of the minor cards. Thank you very much for joining me, and I hope you've enjoyed this journey of the major arcana, the journey of the Fool through the life and fullness of 0 to the world. Thank you.